Hello, everyone, and welcome to the midweek program at the JC Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the education assistant here at the Arboretum. And today we are on the south side of the Great Lawn underneath a beautiful crepe myrtle because it is affording us some shade because we've got a panel of horticulturists here. Today we are doing a horticulture hour. We are doing an hour-long Q&A where we are going to entertain any and every of your horticulture questions. Those of you joining us live are more than welcome to drop your questions here in the chat, and we will go through them over the course of the next hour. Those of you joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to our channel, and feel free to leave a comment down below. And with the announcements out of the way, I think we can get things started with our horticulture hour. What are you thinking, Tim? Do you want to demonstrate?
I can do my little demo here and explain what I have here.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we can get my samples here on camera right now, but I have a selection of Alstroemerias, which you may know those as Peruvian lilies or Inca lilies. There's a series now available called Princess Lilies, I think. I don't have any of those, but these are some that I had in flower in the garden. They're still flowering in the garden, but these are some I just plucked about a half an hour ago. And that's what I did. I said plucked or pull them. You do not cut them. So if you have a brand new plant, you might not want to pull it, but to encourage them to flower more, you actually pluck them out. It kind of, that disturbance encourages them to bloom more. But also if you cut it off, it's just gonna, the old stem's just gonna yellow and look ugly anyways. And so it's just as easy to pluck. So I have these very short stems on some of these. I have some others a little more compact, but this is one I'm going to show here. This is one of the species. This is the only species we have in the garden right now. And this one actually came as a tag-along plant. It's with another plant that we received from another garden. This is Alstroemeria Citacina, which is a Brazilian species, if I remember correctly. So Alstroemeria are South American genus of what look like lilies. They're not lilies. They're in their own family, actually. They're Alstroemeriaceae. So anyways, you see these as cut flowers all over the place. You can grow them in your own garden. So very easily, anywhere from zone 5 to zone 9, maybe even 10, you can grow them. So, and some of these are some of the hardier ones. So anyways, I was just going to demonstrate how I'm going to cut these. So, I mean, I see I have a spare 24 inches there. Voila. So that one there is Citacina. This is a hybrid one, and let me see, I have to think which. This one's called Red Valley, which is growing in the mixed border just behind us, actually.
And as cut flowers, they will
great.
Last like a week or more, 2 weeks even.
This is one that's a shorter growing one. And this one was introduced in the 90s as a pot crop. And this is Jazzy Rose Frost. And I grew this one for probably 5 or 6 years in a pot back home in Pennsylvania. But this is from in the garden. It only gets about 24 inches tall in the garden here.
Is that one of the ones you had last week?
Possibly.
Tim brought some in last week to the staff building, and Mark came in like twice and was like, "Are those fake?"
Yeah, me have fake flowers.
I was like, "Where would we even get fake flowers?"
I despise fake flowers. This is a newer one. This is Alstroemeria Tresronto I think its true cultivar name, but you'll also see it as Indian Summer. And it has really nice dark foliage as well.
There's a whole series of dark foliaged ones. Indian Summer is really the only one you can get around here.
Yeah, and it's been a great one for us. Having the perennial border, it's bulked up really well. This is the one I grew. This one back in Pennsylvania in the ground, and my mom still has it. She hasn't killed it after me being gone for about 19 years. This is Sweet Laura. It's out of some breeding work out of Connecticut, University of Connecticut, and she actually has a light fragrance, and it's one of the hardier ones. So this is a zone 5 one, and I think I got it of all places. I think I got it from Plant Delights years ago. And then this is another one from the same breeding program. This is Freedom, and I don't think it has any fragrance, none that I can tell. But it's another really hardy one for those further north. And then this is a traditional cut flower one here, and super long stalks. This is Casablanca. So this is in our geophyte border, and it's been flowering for a couple weeks and really looking nice. So, but lots of really big inflorescence and flowers on that one. So I
Nice.
just thought I'd highlight those. Those are doing great in our gardens right now. You'll see them pretty often in the western United States, more often here in the southeast, but they do make good plants for us. They like it in the early summer. They will often go semi-dormant through our summer months, so it's not the end of the world if they do go down. But some of them are holding their own through our summers and keep them going active. Then they perk up again in the fall and often give us a second flush. So,
Do you have any tips and tricks for extending the life of cut flowers in a vase?
just actually water them.
And,
Clean.
and refresh,
refresh the water.
The
Yeah.
water.
I mean, these are like at every restaurant. If there's a flower anymore, if it's not a carnation, it is an Alstroemeria. The basic flowers that are having, these are really resilient and great for cutting. So it's just, you can't go wrong with Alstroemeria.
There's a packet you often get from florists.
Yes.
Put that in. That's an ethylene inhibitor, which keeps them from
Absorbing,
degrading.
and defoliating.
And there's a lot of home remedies that do similar things. You can put an aspirin in, or a little bit of Sprite, or something that interrupts the bacteria and the other things that want to rot the plant out from under.
And if you can, try to start with a fairly clean container. I don't always do that.
I think Alice, our intern last year, Allison, she gave the advice that if you can't drink the water, it's not clean enough for the flowers.
There you go.
Keep the water really clean,
That's awesome. Yeah.
and that will also help the life.
And I'll add that Bryce Lane says that whenever you replace the water every 2 days, you can recut the stems.
Yes, ideally.
Just a fresh cut, even just like a centimeter above, but just that fresh cut helps it take up more water.
Because that end
Yeah.
gets clogged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gets clogged, and when you pull the stems out, you can get air up in there, and then you have an air bubble that
Right.
blocks water flow. So the fresh cut, especially if you do it
Underwater.
under running water or underwater, prevents those air bubbles.
Brilliant. Alrighty, well, let's get into our questions from our live audience. And I will say again, if you guys have questions, you are welcome to just drop them in the chat and we will go through them. But Cheryl says that she wants to give away some buttonbush, Cephalanthus occidentalis, and she wants to know, how do I divide it? The shrubs are 8 feet tall. She also wants to know if hardwood or softwood cuttings, and she also says that it's apparently difficult to start from seed.
I mean, it's probably not that difficult from seed if you can collect it. It's not a very big seed. But the cutting is what I would suggest. Right now is probably an excellent time to start taking cuttings of them. They're probably coming into flower, though, too. But cuttings are super easy. I wouldn't try moving an 8-foot tree or dividing it.
I've never heard of dividing.
I wouldn't divide them, no.
I've never heard
But
of dividing.
they're super easy from cuttings. They do like a moist soil. In my experience, the straight species that we grow around here that grows native to the east is for that. But there's another one we have. It's a little more tolerant. We have one called Just Desserts. Deserts, not a dessert, but deserts. And it seems to be a bit more tolerant of just average garden soil and even dry soil. And
It's in Arizona.
And yeah, it's from the westernmost extremes of the in cultivation, and it has been great for us. It is a little bit smaller leaf. That's one problem I have with Cephalanthus, is I think the leaves are too big. But you get a lot of leaf and a little flower. But this one is a happy medium to me. So, but yeah, cuttings
in the
with just some basic, probably hormone 1 would be good. Just a basic rooting hormone. Softwood, yeah, cuttings rather easily.
Let's say I'm a typical home gardener and I have no access to any mist system whatsoever. What are some ways that a normal person can extend the life of their cuttings in hopes that they get
There's something
good?
going on this weekend for us,
I
but
don't
you get
know.
to teach that part,
I know.
Sophia.
I only work under a mist.
Uh,
No, you can use just a standard humidity dome. That's what we send our propagation workshop participants home with. Get a tall one. I think ours are 7 inches tall.
Sure.
So you've got some space in there, and then keep the dome closed for I think 2 weeks is what we
At
suggest.
least. I mean,
At
it
least.
varies to some extent.
And come to one.
What
of
happens
our-
if you don't have a dome?
Oh, you could do like a Ziploc bag,
Yeah,
or
plastic
put the
bag,
whole,
even
you
a
put-
bread bag.
Yeah, you can put the whole pot into a bag and then tie the top shut with so it kind of tense.
We had Joseph Tykonovich here at our winter symposium, and he said that he loves to go to dollar stores and buy casserole dishes because they're just like aluminum casserole dishes that come with a cover on it, and you can just jam holes in the bottom of it, fill it up with substrate, and that's your perfect little humidity dome there. So
Dan Hinckley
Yeah.
uses rotisserie chicken
Whoa.
containers from
Yeah.
Costco.
Why not?
Your rotisserie chicken containers, the you could,
Examinodome.
yeah,
For sure.
Dome, you could do,
And they're delicious.
Your
And
storage
you get-
boxes
and you
for
get the
clothing.
chicken.
If you have a big, like a whole tray,
a big
you can
tote for the tray.
and you flip it over. You put the lid down. You put your tray on the lid, and then you have the clear plastic ones or
The other thing
semi-clear
we
plastic.
use a
on top.
lot of in the children's programs are salad containers, like
Yeah.
the little
Mm.
mixed green containers. That's
Totally.
perfect.
Those are great for seed germination too.
Those
Totally.
you need to cut. You might need to cut air vents after
After they get going.
they get
Sure.
going. But getting that high humidity area will work
Definitely.
in the same
Indirect
way.
sun. You don't want to
No
put it in a
direct
clear
sun.
container, and it's like putting a baby in
oven.
your car. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, wow.
We could not
That's
use that
a-
analogy.
No kidding.
That'd be-
Yeah. There are better
Yeah.
analogies, surely,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that
that's
was
the first one
definitely.
that came to mind. No,
Yeah.
I could have made that a little lighter, for sure.
That butterfly that gets caught in your car.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Well, anyway, moving on. Moving on. Okay, so Trish says my Suwannee squat that I got from you 8 years ago has never bloomed. Any ideas? It is planted as an understory plant and has grown well and is spreading wide and low. First off, does Suwannee squat, does that mean anything to you guys?
Yes.
I used
Great.
to have one right over here.
What is it?
It's a Cornish Florida Swanee squat. It's a
Okay.
A true dwarf.
flowering, eastern flowering dogwood. But I'm guessing maybe she has dogwoods tend to flower better on forest edges, not
Interesting, yep.
necessarily as an understory tree. It'll grow fine in the shade, but it might be getting too much shade, is my guess. Or she could be taking too good of care of it, and it's just going vegetative and not wanting to flower.
All those things jump to mind.
Yeah.
I had a couple in my previous garden, and the ones that were in kind of an edge produced more flower
Yeah.
buds. The ones in the shade didn't, but that didn't bother me because it had such a nice form to it and nice fall color. But those are the two things. And also, if you're doing any kind of fertilizer, that always kind of comes up too.
If you're treating it too well.
Yeah, that you're going to encourage leaf growth and not flower development, but it's probably too shady.
Yeah.
No doubt. Those sound like good ideas for sure. Alrighty. Lena says, what is the very best way to prevent slug damage to vegetables and flower seedlings like dahlias?
Not have slugs.
That's, yeah.
Burn it down. Burn it all down.
Burn it down. That's one approach
Oh, what
to
was
combating
it?
slugs.
Copper.
Copper.
Ah.
The slug repellents actually work really well
Okay.
in a garden.
Interesting.
The
The dichotomous earth ones, because they won't go over that mixed particle.
Is that what it is?
Huh.
Little pellets.
Dichotomy.
Yeah.
No, there's little
there's
pellets,
pellets,
that I'm
but-
thinking of, and they're not.
Is that a bait?
It's some kind. Yes, it's a bait. I'm not sure what what it is, but it's like one of the Simply Natural brands, and they look like little pellets, and they
food.
yeah, and they work. I've had really good success with them.
A cup of
Put those
beer.
out.
Yeah,
A couple.
Yeah,
homemade
I've heard
trap
that.
with the stale beer. Yeah,
A pie tin. You fill a pie tin with beer and they just kind of get drunk in it and sort of.
Don't tip that over because it smells really gross.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
Maybe just
We've
buy
got
the
them
bait.
in the glass house, and it does smell bad.
Oh, really?
Really gross.
Sophia buys beer.
Is that right?
It's got to be cheap
Just
beer,
put that out.
not good beer. Cheap beer.
No doubt. Okay. Well, Anne wants to know, what depth of soil do you recommend for a raised bed for perennials and cherry laurels?
Sure, that's a whole different
Yeah.
spectrum there.
No kidding. Yeah.
And what's
cherry-
she wanting to do with the raised bed?
Right.
Right. Well-
Cherry laurels are highly susceptible to Phytophthora. So if it's heavy soil, they're going to sit in that moisture for a long time, and that's going to cause problems. I don't know if I would mix those two worlds together, because you're going to need different water requirements for vegetables as opposed to what you're going to need for something woody. So you're more likely to overwater, and that's going to cause problems to the cherry.
Did you say it was
Hold on,
vegetables?
say
Or was it herbaceous perennials?
perennials.
It was vegetables and cherry laurels.
Oh.
I don't know where.
No. It's just perennials. It just says perennials.
Oh, perennials. I mean, just grow some drier growing perennials. But
Uh,
I mean, it's the depth. I mean, any depth's going to help you with the drainage at least.
6 inches, a foot.
Minimal.
Yeah.
At least 6 inches.
Yeah, at
more
minimal.
preferable so that it drains through.
I mean, it's just you're going to have to. It depends on the media how much water it's going to hold.
Gonna hold.
But
and
I
the
mean,
slope of the land
the
around
slope,
it
yeah.
and stuff like that.
and is she putting it in a box versus it just blending it into
Is there a
a
reason
berm?
we're doing it in a box versus in the ground?
That's a good question.
Got
Do you
a lot.
guys
I
want to?
got too many questions.
Sure. Maybe we could talk about that for a little bit because I feel like a lot of homeowners feel like they need to go in a raised bed when it's like, do
Is
you
your
really
soil
need to?
terrible? Is that why? And she's building up,
Sure.
and it has a hard pan. And my guess was break up the hard pan
Yeah.
if that's the case as much as you can, and then build.
Organic matter.
And with organic matter, yeah,
Sure.
use a lot of organic matter.
One thing Jim Putnam pointed out to me when he was here for Raulston Blooms was that if you do a Google search for garden beds, you get nothing but raised beds. You no longer get beds full of bedding plants, as they're called. Like it's like people they hear garden beds, they think, oh, it's got to be a raised bed.
And there's also there's accessibility for people
Yeah.
will do raised beds for an
And that's more the
accessibility,
Mhm.
and that's one thing. But if it's just to have pretty things to look at, then
I've seen a lot of commercial landscapers will do the dumping the soil mix on top of ground to plant bedding plants and annuals in because it's easier to do that in the loose soil.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't do that with the
no,
cherry laurel.
not at all. But if you live in a situation where you don't have garden space and that's the plant that you want, then but I would keep something like that woody separate from. It's going to be different water requirements.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something to think about when you're installing it rather than later on.
Just a lot of questions.
Yeah.
answer your question with more questions.
Please, it's a horticulture hour, baby. Let's
Reverse
keep
it.
this thing rolling.
We reverse it.
Okay, Carol says, problem. Steep slope with exposed tree roots. Want to plant over the roots. How much soil can I lay over the tree roots, or should I plan to use large pots? If so, how much weight can the tree roots handle?
It's generally not good to put soil over exposed tree roots. What you're going to do is create a whole nother layer for another root system that's going to come up into that nice moist layer and take advantage of the moisture and the water. And then when it gets hot, that little new root zone will die out and cause problems to the tree. Mature red maples are prone to do that. Some of the bigger oaks will do that. You obviously can't take a rototiller in there and till that up to plant in it. If you did container plants, it's not going to cause a whole lot of damage because it's going to be a small area. But, what I try to tell people to do is work with what you have and plant some dry shade perennials in there that can take that kind of situation, because nothing you're going to put in there is going to be able to keep up with that tree's root system, because every bit of moisture and nutrient in that soil zone is going to go up into the tree.
The tree's always going to win.
Yeah,
The tree's
will
always
win.
going to win that situation.
Spring ephemerals.
Yes, if you spring ephemerals are great. Things that can take dry shade are the best things to try to do that. Now you can put mulch over that. I wouldn't do more than 2 to 3 inches because that's going to break down over time. But if you put more soil on top of there, you're just going to create a whole nother horizon of adventitious roots that are going to take advantage of that. It's an unfortunate thing of gardening underneath big mature trees.
Yeah. And I always love the idea of container gardening as a bonsai artist, but if you've got a steep slope, you got to imagine gravity exists and
Yes.
you may just have things falling over when you don't expect it. But if you got vole problems, containers, hostas, if you want hostas, you can grow them in containers and it's not going to stop the deer, but it'll stop the voles from munching on their roots. So that is something you can do that would fit in that situation quite well.
There are a number of like Greg was saying about working with what you have.
Yeah.
Finding ground covers, like shady ground covers.
Absolutely.
Would be what I would say.
Yeah. I wanted to make a joke about English ivy, but that's not even funny.
Yeah, back with babies and cars.
Yeah, honestly, I can't tell which is
It's
more
in that
egregious even. Okay.
They're both pretty high up there. Let's move on.
Let's move on. Jared says, I just got a Cornus wilsoniana white jade. Very nice. After seeing it in your midweek a few weeks back. Thank you very much. how long can I expect it to take for the bark to start peeling? It's a small, probably 2 or 3 year grafted tree right now.
It's probably quite small. You're not going to get exfoliating, probably 5 to 6 inch diameter trunk.
It's going to take it a while to get to that point.
Sure.
Patience is a virtue in gardening.
It is.
You have to kind of breathe deep and enjoy the now, enjoy the moment that you're in. So, that's
plant 10 years.
Yeah, that's an unusual tree. Kudos for buying that and giving it a chance. But there's a saying that goes around that something about the quality of a person that plants something that you're not going to enjoy the full benefits of.
Totally, yeah.
And that's what it is when you plant trees. You have to plant them for others to enjoy.
For sure.
In the long term.
That reminds me that we have one of those in our upcoming auction.
Oh yeah.
Which opens Monday at noon.
It sure does.
And it runs through, closes right after the symposium ends on Saturday at 3 p.m.
Yeah, I think so.
And so look for one of those in the auction. We'll be adding plants Monday, but we'll add them in groups. So Tuesday there might be some more, and Wednesday there might be some more, and so on and so on. So
sure.
Go to the website on Monday. Well, it's going to be posted on our website, and check it frequently.
I've got a vaguely related anecdote about flaky bark on small trees. So I've got a Alstroemeria farii that I've been growing as a bonsai since the summer of 2017, and it's about 7 years old now. And just last summer, it started to flake, and I'm keeping it as a bonsai. You'll get to see it on the midweek program in 2 weeks, I think. We're going to be doing bonsai, but it's small, and the trunk's probably honestly like 1.5 inches at most in caliber at this point, and it's already got flaking. I noticed that the flaking happened during heat stress. Basically, I let it go. I should have watered it in the morning. I watered it in the afternoon. It was a little bit stressed, and the bark started to flake. So I don't know how much that helps really.
What
but
month was it that it flaked?
It
June
was
May, June is when I expect.
Yeah,
early July is when you.
For
get
sure,
most of
it was July, I think, by that point.
Yeah.
And yeah, so 7 years. And if you got this tree in the ground and can let it get big, it'll presumably flake a lot quicker. So maybe set your hopes on 7 years. And if it doesn't happen, there's the spectacular one outside our education center that is so gorgeous.
Come take a gander of it.
Come take a gander when it's raining.
Yep.
There's lots of things that are exceptionally beautiful in this garden in the rain, and that tree is one of them.
Yes.
So.
And nobody else comes out in the rain. So
nobody comes out in the rain.
In the garden.
It's really nice. If you're a photographer, great chance to take pictures of raindrops on flowers.
Sure. Good light and
honestly, this really is a special place in the rain. I am highly recommend it. It's beautiful in the sunshine too, but also. Okie dokie. So Sally says that she just purchased a Transplanting Martagon clawed shride. It is in bloom now in the pot it came in.
Yeah.
Do I wait for fall or just after blooms fade to transplant to garden? And Sally is on the Central Oregon coast.
I would plant it now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially Central Oregon
It's going to
coast.
go, I mean, they're going to have, actually it'd be pleasant there.
Yeah, but absolutely tasty climate up there.
But still, it's going to flower and it's going to drop. It'll probably go dormant midsummer if it's a Martagon, is my guess. So.
Interesting.
So plant it now.
Keep the deer from it. The deer have been eating my lilies.
She might have elk instead.
Oh, whoa.
On the Central Oregon coast.
Yeah. Somebody's always got it worse.
Yeah.
Right? No kidding. Okie dokie.
Bears.
Elizabeth says, if I compost violets, will they show up in the compost later? She's doing home compost without high heat.
I would guess so. If
it's rhizomes or seeds.
And seeds, you're going to have...
Yes.
Compost can get pretty warm, but if yours is not doing that,
unless you're actively.
If you're not sure, I
would throw some nutsedge in there for company, and you get a whole cornucopia of nightmare weeds.
Honestly,
we're not going to be able to post this video.
That's okay. We can edit out the egregious bits in post.
There's a whole lot of egregious bits.
It's gonna be really jumpy.
That's okay. That's okay. We all
Get that
have
good purple set.
Not the scordum that I have in the border.
A little bit of that.
So bad.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. And I feel like there should be like more communal composting, because like it takes a lot of biomatter to get any sort of anything with it. But then I just mean to get any sort of compost that you can use in your garden. Like it takes a lot of food scraps. So like maybe make friends with your neighbors and see if you guys can like build a pile together, because then you might get the heat to suppress the seeds, and then you might get enough compost to actually use it. I don't know. Maybe worth a shot. Maybe worth a shot.
But then again, if you already have violets and it's something you're fighting,
right? Yeah,
it'll probably be fine.
Yeah, honestly, there's some fights you just can't win. And
you can eat the violet foliage and the flowers too. They are good in salads.
And they're sweet. They're cute little flowers.
They're sweet little flowers.
I don't hate them. It's an easy one to open your heart to.
Yeah, my heart is open. They look good in the lawn.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Sophia, a different Sophia, wants to know, the gardenia blossoms the past couple of years are totally infested by tiny insects. Are these thrips, and how to best control them? Can neem oil be used as a spray?
I would say they're probably thrips. That's
Thrips,
normal.
Whiteflies too. They get
that underneath the leaves. With the flowers, you get the flower thrips.
If you're calling them tiny and on flowers, they're probably thrips.
And
horticultural oil.
You're going to hurt the blooms with whatever you treat. One thing you can do, which is kind of insurmountable, is to pick the old flowers off.
That's what I say, cleanliness.
That'll get rid of some of the egg laying and the reproductive side of them. And that's a cyclical pest. Some years are really bad, others you don't hardly ever see them.
And then after it's done flowering, you could probably do an oil spray.
If you can keep the plant stress down, the plant can resist those insects better.
But the cleanliness is, I think, would be a
cleaning up any debris on the ground.
That's a plant that I've mentioned, I think, here before, that I used to treat almost like a biennial. I would plant them at Mother's Day and let them bloom for a couple of years until the thrips and the whiteflies just completely consume them, and then rip them out and plant another one.
I don't have problems with thrips, but I do have a lot of problems with whiteflies at home. I use neem oil for those, and it works great. You apply it. I apply it weekly for several weeks leading up to the bloom, but not after it starts. But by then it's getting warm enough that the whiteflies go away, and they have a temperature zone that they do best at, and outside of that zone it's too hot or too cold, and they just kind of...
Sure, what a system... Oh, you wouldn't use a systemic on the flower. That's the trouble.
Okay. Well, so we got an update. Jared, the gentleman who asked about the Cornus wilsoniana white jade, he apparently has that planted next to a Pinus bungiana.
Okay.
So, Jared, you have pretty good taste in plants, I will just say.
I think we could be friends, Jared.
Honestly, right?
Who is this Jared?
Right? Wow. Okay, so let's see. Still about thrips on gardenias. Can spraying be done in the summer, or does it have to be during flowering?
Depends on what you're spraying. There's going to be a temperature listed on the whatever you decide to spray with, that you do not spray above that temperature.
Yeah.
If you spray when it's too hot, you can damage the plant. And if you spray when it's too cold, then you don't really get any activity either.
Sure.
So,
read the label.
Read the label.
But I would think
everything will have its own range.
Be mindful of pollinators also.
Yeah, that's part of the reason going with
A systemic.
an oil is fairly benign. It's suffocating things, and only if they're on there. But like your cleanliness, and then after it's done flowering, I would think maybe try a couple of sprayings of oil to bring down the population. And then you could do it in late winter as well, before, just as you're coming out of dormancy as well.
And I'm wondering if there's anything on our extension websites that would have more details on that.
Huh.
That's just a guess offhand.
Yeah, I would imagine the Plant Toolbox has resources on how to deal with thrips, so I will drop a link to that in the description of this video. Alrighty. Let's see. Sally says a neighbor has Trochodendron aurelioides, the cartwheel tree. Some leaves are half green and yellow, with the yellow on the tip half. Distinct demarcation. Do you think this is normal or a nutrient deficiency? And again, this is Sally in the Central Oregon coast.
It could be. I don't know if those the old leaves or are those the new leaves.
Is there a variegated one?
I'm not sure, but
Oh,
I've killed so many of them.
goodness.
There used to be a spectacular one in the old lab house, and then I've never gotten one started since then.
Aw.
I keep on killing them.
It's hard to say without like seeing a picture
Yeah.
of it to determine if it's a nutrient. But that wouldn't surprise me if that's what that was.
Yeah, and different nutrient deficiencies have different. The discoloration appears differently. So
Yeah.
like iron is interveinal chlorosis, and nitrogen occurs on either the old foliage or the new foliage, and it's a total yellowing. So yeah, it might be, but there's a lot of different things
Soil
it could
test.
be. Yeah,
Yes.
a
Take
soil
a
test.
soil
Yeah,
test.
that's a.
And you're going to have
evergreen.
different things out there with the
Yeah,
volcanic
probably
soils
evergreen.
origins that we wouldn't have out here.
Different
Yeah.
pH things that we don't have.
If it's
Sure.
old growth, it may just be going.
Yeah,
Huh.
that's the other
mean,
thing. It's
Evergreen plants.
They
lose
aren't
their
truly
leaves.
evergreen.
They cycle out.
the leaves only live so long.
Right. Yeah.
That is true, and for a lot of plants, this is the time of year that they start to
shed
drop
the
their
old-
evergreen leaves.
Mm.
Like my magnolia at home is
Yep.
dropping all its old foliage. We don't we have a trichodendron in the auction next week? I think
so.
we do.
Ooh.
I think it's trichodendron oralioides.
Are we shipping plants for that auction?
They will be shipped if they are small enough to ship.
Interesting.
So if it's in a gallon pot or smaller,
Uh-huh.
and the plant is not ginormous and won't
Yeah.
fit in a box without breaking it, then yes, we will ship it at $12 a plant. But if it's too big, a handful of the plants are very big, and we won't ship those.
Well, those of you out in Oregon, check out our
Yep.
plant auction and read the descriptions. You may
Yep.
just be able to get yourself some plants.
In shipping from North Carolina to Oregon, there is some West Coast stuff. that
Yeah,
can
there
go on,
is.
But the group that's shipping it is Plant Delight's Nursery.
Oh, cool.
And they know all about what to do when they're shipping to Oregon, because there
Yes,
are
they do.
inspections and other things for East Coast plants to go to the West Coast.
Yes, indeed. I remember that working at a nursery. Alrighty, let's see. Gosh, okay, I didn't write down who asked this, but somebody wants to know any reminders on what we should be doing in the garden right now. They are always appreciative of our insights.
Weeding,
Weeding.
Yeah, that's constant. With
constant, every day.
Yeah.
Walk around your garden with a hoe and
You have a
Weed some
pokeweed that
plants.
popped up last week that was an inch tall. It's now 3 feet. No.
But it's easier to reach.
Yeah.
Just looking for insects, like harmful ones. This is a good time of the year to catch things before they get out of hand.
Yeah. And I'm starting to deadhead a little bit in the
Yep.
border, for instance.
we're entering that time of year where it's going to get real hot and dry. So spot watering if you need
As
to
needed.
water.
As needed.
Anything you've recently planted.
Recent planting, yeah.
You know.
You can mulch now.
Yeah.
We're mulching the world as we speak.
I've noticed that. We got our whole army of interns. They're just mulch. That's fantastic. So your army of interns at home, get
Yeah.
them on that. It's a great use for them.
It's a good time of year since everything is leafed out, or most everything is leafed out on your trees. You can see the dead branches.
Yeah.
Where you might not see them in the winter. When you prune them, you can mark them now and prune them later, or
Sure.
prune them now, or whatever.
Absolutely.
I have a bunch of those in the garden.
Absolutely. And, the garden's beautiful right now. So you can also take some time to just go out and enjoy it. Like that's part of the whole gardening process, is really enjoying the fruits of you don't just have to labor constantly in your garden. You should also take a moment to stop and smell the roses. If
Is
you
that what
will.
I get to do?
There you go.
Sometimes.
Once in a
Yeah.
while.
I mean, if you've looked at the forecast, at least for here in Raleigh tomorrow, it's like upper 70s to around 80, which is a
Yeah.
miracle for this time of the year.
It really
Then
Yeah,
next
it
week,
won't
of course,
last.
goes back to reality.
And I heard we're supposed to have a La Nina summer, which means very hot and very little rain.
Oh, good.
So,
That sounds
Great.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
or unless we get a hurricane,
Yes, hurricanes are what
higher
save
chance
us
of hurricane.
here on the East Coast in the summer.
That would be
Alrighty.
a part we need to cut out too. That's controversial stuff.
No kidding. Alrighty, Cecilia says, I have a yucca plant, maybe 7 to 10 years old, and it never flowers. I see other people's small plants with big blooms. What could be wrong?
Is it sunlight?
Right
Does
now.
Mm,
That's the only thing that really does it. But yeah, ours are spectacular right now. And it depends if it's a filamentosa is the most common. I mean, yeah, they should start flowering by now, unless it's not getting enough light.
Yeah, they
Or is she fertilizing it too much again and being too nice to it?
Sure.
They need full sun.
Yeah.
And
And they like lean.
Lean,
Lean,
yes. Like I
dry.
said, no food. Starve it if it's in full sun. If it's in any amount of shade, that could be why it might not be doing its thing.
okie dokie. So Lois says, I have a pussy willow in a pot. When can I plant it?
now if you want to water it. But
If you want to water it, that's a little risky.
I mean, it's probably better to get it in the ground, I would think.
Some
than to
people
let it
feel
sit.
that way. For sure. It's because you still have to water if it's in the pot, and they
in
do.
a pot, you might have to water it twice a day.
Honestly,
the pot's going to get real hot and,
And
stress
it's
those
going to
roots.
grow this summer. I mean, they are very vigorous. And
Yeah.
For sure.
Depending where it's at, if it's in this area, your pussy willows are typically cooler growing plants that don't always like it. And if you have their roots out of the ground, that could cause additional stress than having the insulation of the ground as a means of keeping its roots a little bit cooler.
And they tend to be kind of short-lived.
Yeah, so but get it in the ground as fast as you can, and then let it flush, and you can always stick a few cuttings in.
Sure.
If it grows vigorously.
And don't neglect it when you get it in the ground. Like, keep in mind that you're going to have to, depending on how big it is, you might have to keep watering it for years even. The smaller the plant, the faster it'll get established. So often we recommend that people buy and plant quarts and no bigger than quarts, because the quart plant gets established super quick and then it grows super quick, and you don't have to keep worrying about watering. Whereas if you get a plant that's already established, literally you may need to keep watering it for years. If it's a 6-inch tree, that's going to take like 7 years to get established. Like, you are seriously going to be watering it for that long. So think about that. Don't forget it. And
smaller is sometimes better.
It is indeed. Okie dokie. Let's see. Ginger says, fire blight on my apple tree. Best prescription?
Prune it out.
Prune it out.
And how far down from do you have to go?
You don't have to go real far down. I had a huge collection of crab apples in my previous job, and we spent days just going through and doing that. And we would take advantage of that time frame to prune the trees. So you could do that. There are sprays that you can use, but they have to be sprayed multiple times in the before bud break and things like that. It's another kind of a cyclical problem. Air circulation will help with that to a degree, but pruning out the diseased pieces and getting
clean
rid
your
of
pruners.
There's debate on that.
Yeah.
There's research that says you don't have to. If you want to, isopropyl alcohol to squirt on your tools. But if you've got multiple apples, you're gonna deal with it irregardless. If you've got one, if you're pruning the same plant, you don't have to prune after each cut.
Sure. And apples are in Rosaceae, and there are a lot of hosts of fire blight in Rosaceae. So if you've got like roses planted near your apples, you may be exacerbating that issue. So you might need to think about what sorts of plants are nearby and if you need to replace them.
And there are cultivars that are more resistant than others, so another option could be replace it.
Yep. Good point.
Definitely. Okie dokie. Elizabeth wants to know, what is a good tree to keep in a large pot in shade to part shade?
Japanese maple.
Yeah, it is. Say it louder,
Japanese
Tim.
maples.
Yeah.
I would go for like Shira sawanums and japonicums just because I think they're prettier.
They are pretty.
They're a little slower growing sometimes, but
True.
Yeah, Japanese maples in general. Acer palmatum, yeah.
But I mean, there's just a
And there's a
preposterous...
plethora of cultivars you can
Yes.
grow.
Thousands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Millions.
And some
Maybe
of them
not
are quite
thousands, but
dwarf
millions.
and do well
Yeah.
in even a smaller pot. There are Japanese maples that are just a couple of feet.
We have a Shishigashira just right over here, and they're super slow growing, but
They are very slow
it's a
growing.
fairly large one we have, but
Yeah, but
cute
those
one in a
are
pot.
those are pretty popular bonsai specimens in Japan, Shishigashira.
But other things that you might use would be maybe a fatsia, not necessarily a tree, but
Cool.
a shrub, or an akuba.
Yeah.
Actually make
Any
really
kind of
good
conifer. There's tons of conifers that
for
work
the shade,
well.
though.
Shade.
Yeah.
I was gonna say
Taxus or
ginkgo.
something.
Yeah, taxus, you could train a yew,
Huh.
or a cephalotaxis, but cephalotaxis tend to be stickly until they get bigger. But yews tend to be a little bit denser.
Absolutely.
Just thinking out loud. Let's see.
Bryce Lane says that when he started teaching horticulture, they used to give people a list that was, these are the plants that you can grow in containers. And since then, we've learned a preposterous amount about plants, and now you get a list that these are the plants that you can't grow in containers, which is to say that you could probably grow it in a container. If it's a tree and you like it and it does well in shade, it doesn't hurt to give it a try growing it in a container.
Yep. Fair point.
don't feel constrained.
That, and over the years, 40 years ago, there were only, you would go to a garden center and there'd only be 40 different plants, right?
Sure.
And now there's hundreds and hundreds, and you have mail order on top of that. So the market's bigger. You can try a lot of different stuff.
Okay.
Oh, podocarpus.
There you go. Because Carol asked a question that was suggestions for good evergreens to plant in large pots. It's a different question, but there you go.
But the
Podocarpus.
Fatsia, the Acuba, podocarpus.
And in sun.
Actually, now this one says will be in shade. So
yeah, there we go.
yeah,
Answer 2. Yeah.
yeah. Are there any good sun trees that you guys can think of?
Conifers in pots.
Yeah.
Japanese
You gotta
maple.
stay on top of the wall. Japanese maple, that's sun or shade, right?
Honestly-
I have a ginkgo that's doing really well.
Yes.
I had it in a
Ginkgo.
pot for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah,
And I neglect the heck out of it.
That's beautiful.
It's rocking it out.
I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's 2 years old, I think.
Agaves.
oh yeah.
They like it dry.
They're
and-
not
If you
necessarily a
want to
tree,
get
but that's cool.
stabbed.
Yeah,
Wonderful
they're great in
structure.
a pot, and some of them are kind of like Oveda are kind of live half in the shade anyway in the wild, so you can
No doubt.
do them half in the shade in a pot too.
That's awesome. Sophia wants to know, do flowering Osmanthus ever fruit? And if yes, can they start from fruit? Can they be propagated from cuttings?
Depends which Osmanthus. Fragrance, or most of them, I think, they're
Most
all male
are male.
clones
Yep.
because they're dioecious. I did notice Shiki, which is, it's not grown necessarily for its flower, but it does flower after it's very old. We have a specimen that I noticed the accession yesterday, is 83, but I saw fruit on it yesterday.
I have a heterophilus in my garden.
some of the
It's not that old,
heterophilus,
and it does bear
Yeah,
fruit.
they
They're
bear
like little
fruit.
tiny little olives.
They're little black
Yeah.
olives.
There's a
So-
Jim Porter Osmanthus
Porter.
over in the winter garden
And
that has fruits on it now.
that's an Armatus, I think, theoretically, possibly,
Huh.
or an Armatus hybrid. So yeah,
Yeah,
and I used to get fruit on Armatus.
interesting.
Yeah.
They're handsome fruit.
If
I
they're,
didn't know.
if they're girls, they can have fruit.
Yeah, I didn't know they did it, but
most
But the
all
fragrance are
of the
few and
like the
clones that we have.
commercially available are going to be males.
Yeah.
sure.
It's fine.
Okay.
Everything's fine.
No problem.
So next question is from Ginny, who is our volunteer working at the front desk right now. So thank you, Ginny, for
All right.
everything you do. She wants to know, she says her dwarf Osmanthus was blooming when she bought it 3 years ago, but it hasn't bloomed since. How can she get it to bloom?
I wonder if she's being too nice to it,
Yeah,
or it's just settling into the ground. In a pot, it might flower a little sooner.
for sure.
But and it depends on which selection. If it's Kurohime,
They're
that
not
thing
heavy
flowers.
flowers.
Once they're established, they can be. But or is it a fragrance? Because fragrance, it'll sometimes they grow vigorously. Once they settle in, it takes them a few years to settle in to actually flower real well, especially the orange ones. Unless you're growing apricot echo, which doesn't know when to stop flowering. So variety and conditions.
Yeah.
It's probably settling in is my guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so John says, I want to grow daylilies in pots. What size pot should I use?
3 gallon.
At
that's
least.
that's a good size.
3 to 7 gallons.
That's going to give them enough
I
room for the
mean,
roots.
it's just like the nursery pots all come in size like I can't think of
You might get a 2-quart, but you might buy a daylily in a quart. You're wanting something bigger to put it in.
Sure.
So you probably give yourself 2 or 3 years in a 3-gallon
like
pot.
18 to 24 inch.
Interesting. If you got a bigger pot, could you shove more
Yes.
lilies in there?
Yes.
I would do maybe a 3 gallon and then maybe a 5, one of those
Yeah,
two.
and those are also
Interesting.
manageable when you go to need to divide them because they grow.
Right.
And if you're buying a terracotta pot or something, it might not be sold as a certain number
Yeah,
of
it's
gallons.
gonna be
It'll sold
inches.
as a certain number of inches diameter. So you're talking 8 or 10 inches or
At
more
least.
diameter.
I mean, 8 or 10 is going to be like that. I would probably go. I mean, depending on the lily you're getting.
Yeah, some are more compact.
I would go
Mhm.
probably 18 to 24 inches.
Cool.
So like
The more room, the more
think of like a
divisions you
pizza.
can get.
Ooh.
And more flowers.
Yes, go on.
Yes,
think
please
of like
talk
a
more about
pizza. So like a 12-inch pizza.
Yes.
Is
Small or
probably-
medium.
Yeah, I mean, like a 12-inch pizza is
And
probably
what would you
like
put
a
on this
2
pizza?
gallon. Oh, we put lilies in it.
Okay.
Right?
The tubers,
No, we
Found
ate
out
those the other week
recently,
on the
You
for
ate the
sure.
lilies?
Recently that
We ate the lilies.
Okay.
They were
lily
okay.
tubers.
Yeah.
You have to be careful because they
The
can
buds or
cross.
the tubers?
We ate the tuber and the flowers.
How about
Yeah,
We
the
had a-
flowers, yeah.
We had a vendor at
Flowers,
Blooms
never
that
eat
was
the
selling
tubers.
them. I've never heard of that, but
Yeah, me
apparently-
neither.
You have to be careful though because they can cross, and when they cross, that is apparently bad news.
Huh.
But
Interesting.
that's just what the man told me.
For
The new
sure.
hybrids.
Okay. Jennifer says that she would like to get started with a couple of fruit trees in her yard here in the Triangle.
Okay.
What kind of considerations should she take into account as a novice? And she wants cherries and peaches in particular.
Cherries will not grow here.
There you go. That's, yeah,
Unfortunately,
unfortunately.
you need to go to our friends in Oregon, or they grow a lot of cherries in
And
Michigan.
you can grow them in the mountains, I think.
Yeah.
Sure, that makes sense.
But here in the Triangle,
It's
So
humid
just-
here.
Just move.
Yeah, and
Step one.
with peaches, most of them are going to require a spraying program,
Yeah,
and you're going to need full sun.
yes.
And
That's the first thing. First and foremost, you need full sun. If you're going to
Sure.
get any fruit out of this, you need full sun. And then it definitely helps to know that peach tree short life is a
Yes.
thing. That's a thing that happens. They do not live forever. And again, like you were saying, cherries do not like it
change
here.
your fruit is what I'm going to suggest.
Yeah.
If you
Figs,
Big
I was
Big.
gonna say,
blueberries.
Yeah.
apples. There's some great
Blackberries,
disease
raspberries.
resistant apples.
Yeah.
Totally.
There's some new
Thornless
patio
blackberries.
blackberries
Yes.
are good. Blueberries.
The I know there are native blueberries. Are there native
Oh my,
blackberries?
yes.
Are pretty
Pawpaw.
native.
Pawpaw.
Pawpaw's going to be a while if
And
you
they
ever
sucker.
get real fruit. And
Yeah.
they sucker. But if you want fairly quick gratification, yeah, figs,
Yes.
blackberries,
blueberries.
blueberries. Get some
Strawberries.
Get a combination of the blueberries so that you get pollination.
Mm-hmm.
Full
Have more than one
sun,
clone.
good drainage.
For sure.
If you
There,
do blueberries, test your soil.
yeah.
Lower pH is good.
There are some orchards in the state of North Carolina that grow Asian pears.
Yep.
So, another rosaceae, so you're going to be battling the fire
Fire
blight and that kind of
And
stuff.
I've had that issue here in the
Hair
garden. before.
trellis rust, fire blight.
Yeah,
All kinds of issues.
for sure. For sure. It's definitely going to be a labor of love if you get into fruit trees.
You
But
get into peaches.
yeah,
And cherries.
start with sun and then follow your heart.
If
And
you're
then-
really into it, you could try some hardy citrus.
interesting.
They're getting more available. They are not as tasty, but the ones we have in the garden, like Dunstan, for instance, is a good one. But you need space.
a lot of space.
Space and sun.
Patience.
Patience.
How about the pineapple guavas?
You can do those. I don't always get good fruit set on them, but sometimes we do. I like to eat the flower petals.
Yeah, those
They're
are really delightful.
Yeah, it's fairly short-lived.
Sure.
Like, it's a really pretty
That is
plant.
the flowering's fairly
Flowers.
short.
Yeah.
Have
Some-
you seen fruit
Yeah, we get fruit.
occasionally every year or
We're getting more and more.
interesting?
As the last several years that we've had more mild winters or
Interesting.
mild summers.
If you
And
want something that'll take over the world, you can go passion fruit.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
vine.
It's a-
I don't
it's
know
a-
if that any of the fruiting ones. I have not tried any Passiflora edulis, which is the fruit one, but you can grow them in containers. They're borderline hardy. I'd like to try some edulis, but I have not.
There are pomegranates. Now we
Yes,
usually grow
pomegranate.
here the ornamental ones that
Savilovsky is one
ugly
that's
little
been
fruit, but
um,
there are
a
ones
Russian
that
one.
are sort of ornamental but have big edible fruit. We have
They're
a
not
few
gonna
in the
be-
auction that are coming up.
They're
Yeah.
not going to be any pomegranates we get here are not going to be the big ones you see in the store.
Sure
Not as
enough.
pretty
They're
as
going
those.
to be much smaller and
Yeah, even
More
the edible
ornamental,
cultivars.
bred for their flowers.
But those, there are. I mean, they are edible.
they are
Right.
yes, you can eat them.
I don't know if this is a tip for a beginner, but thinning out your flowers on your peach tree, you should
Yes.
certainly you should certainly try peaches.
Yeah.
And when you do it, you should thin your flowers out so that there's one flower every 6 inches, I believe. If you have too many fruit on one tree, it's going to be spreading out all the sugar amongst all the fruit, so they aren't as tasty. So you have less fruit on the tree.
And they're
you get
little.
more delicious. Yeah, they'll be little if you have too many fruit on the tree. So if you thin them out, you get bigger, delicious fruit. And I believe in tree fruits class, we learned that like the sooner you can thin, the better. So ideally you thin them off as flowers. If you gotta wait until they're little baby fruits to thin them off, you can do that too. The sooner the better, but it's certainly something you should consider, especially if it's your fruit tree and you have the option to thin out the fruit. Like I would be all on board with that. That'd be super fun.
You'll want to get a plant that's either dwarf or grown on a dwarfing rootstock too, so
Absolutely.
you can actually reach all of the different
Absolutely.
flowers.
And that's another thing. There are lots and lots of cultivars, both the scion, but also the rootstock. So if you do find yourself getting baffled by the caprices of nature, like try different cultivars. Like it might just be that you didn't have the right selection just yet.
Yeah, when we had that apple program last September, they were saying even across the state of North Carolina, there are these old cultivars of apples. Some do well in the mountains, some do well in the Piedmont, you know, and some do better. And so especially with these old ones, you can find ones that need less spraying, and will do well in the Raleigh area.
I don't have a source for it, but I know, like you were saying, heirloom apples. My friend has an apple tree. He doesn't do anything to it.
Yeah.
He likes to taunt me with how he prunes it.
For sure.
And he gets, like, I literally went home with a basket from his tree this big, and they're so good.
Yeah.
No idea what kind it is, but the heirloom,
no kidding.
And I don't know where you
that
get
apple
them,
talk
but,
in the book that that Diane Flint wrote about apples, she said that there were like cultivars that performed well in like Alabama.
Yeah.
So
even,
like
I think Florida.
And, yeah, sure enough.
So yeah, and that video is on our YouTube channel, and there was the speaker, the woman, I can't remember her name.
Diane Flint.
Diane, and then another person at that was the extension agent in North Carolina who deals a lot with heirloom apples.
Oh,
he
wow.
was there as well.
Is
David
that on our channel? Because that was Friends of the Arboretum.
It was. It's on the YouTube.
Yeah, we did a replay for the midweek program. We posted the replay.
And
for
so,
sure.
And either of those people would be good to reach out to. But Diane has a book also.
Yes, she does. And it was a delightful read, to be sure.
It's all about chilling hours. I can just start. Now I'm going to relive my tree.
Okay. Okay. We are.
There's one other
Apples
thing.
and pizza.
Chilling hours.
Apples, pizza, and peaches. It's killing me.
No kidding. No kidding. Yeah. Well, I wanted to finish this off with a final question, but you know, we are at time, and there were lots of questions. We got through them all, and yeah, I feel really good about this. So thank you so much. I didn't introduce you guys at the beginning. I'm just realizing that now. So this is Dennis, our curator. This is Sophia, our nursery technician. We've got Greg, the director of horticulture, and Tim, our research technician, who's been here forever. But yeah, you guys know. Thank you, all of you, for joining us for this horticulture hour. It was fun and enlightening and lots of good stuff shared. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on the midweek program today. We will be back next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. We will be going over Mark's top picks for the month of June. So we will have our director, Mark Wethington, here showing off his favorite plants. So that should be lots of fun. We will see you all next time. Y'all take care.